Alrighty, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cosmic Surfers. Let's see if I can record this video without sounding like an arsehole, which I may fail at. I wanted to talk about why becoming a millionaire and moving to the forest into isolation and becoming more sustainable and living off grid and all of that kind of thing is not the solution. It might sound a little contradictory, especially if you've seen the videos in relation to cataclysms and magnetic pole shifts and the way the world's going. And while I do agree for sure that having a natural environment affords a lot of benefits, especially electromagnetically. Having natural spring water on my property is key. Clean air, great soil, volcanic soil, sacred site, spiritual benefits, and having money, allows things for having the time and space to do personal development work. Ultimately, it's not the solution. And while I've got a lot of rants and around the so-called freedom movement, around poverty consciousness, if you do any kind of research, you'll realise that the usury system and the money system is not in alignment with natural law and our greatest good. So we do need to create solutions to that. I implore everyone to go and look at mutual credit currencies and do some research on that. Maybe do some future videos on that, but I wanted to keep business stuff out of this because it is part of my new work. But yeah, I've heard Mark Passio speak about moving, into the forest and being off grid has not been part of the solution. I've done it for the last 10 years or so. I exited my company before the age of 30. So, of course, some element of this is going to be ego-based or kind of flexing in some way. I don't think there's any way I can avoid that on this topic. I've seen a lot of people that essentially market. I'm a marketer. You can see the marketing around Millionaire does this and the titles of, listen to me because I'm a millionaire. But it doesn't, it's not without its issues. Of course, first world problems to most people, the way people look and treat you as well. Some of the downsides would include, a disconnection from average people and daily struggles. But of course it doesn't, more money, more problems is also a thing. And it also means that doesn't mean that, finances come and go as well. You can still have financial challenges as well, even if you are a millionaire. But as I have had this time to do a lot of deep work on myself through modalities such as rebirthing, breath work, clearing the death urge, working on things like physical immortality, which is a really loaded subject, especially with the psychopathic technical inversion of that, where people are trying to upload their minds into a digital system. There are ancient practices to do with, rejuvenation and healing. And I do believe that people have lived for long periods of time, even if they do die. We still do know that we are immortal beings beyond the physical regardless. And I do think that clearing the death urge is a key part of that. And around the summer solstice here in the Southern Hemisphere, I'll likely bring someone on to talk more about that. But ultimately, objective morality and natural law is the pathway. And even if I do or did create some kind of individual freedom. It's still the my freedom part of it, which is how Mark Passio would describe it. And it's not like I came here out of a selfish endeavor. I was guided to come here from the Amazon, from the plant spirits, to be a custodian of land, to take on responsibility. It does bring up a lot of stuff when you start interacting with other people, especially if you start getting involved in Indigenous stuff as well. There's a lot of historical trauma there too. But ultimately, I started out as a poker player when I was at university. The 3 generations of gamblers in my family. I was a gambling addict and an alcoholic. Moved out of home at 15, had a lot of stuff going on. And decided to end that cycle and to exit the company. I always knew that it was a stepping stone to do the real work. And it was after my first vision quest when I flew first class from first and only time I've flown first class. It's not about nice things, but that's just part of the story. Went straight from my first vision quest to an industry event in Switzerland at Verbier. 50,000 euro a week, or whatever it was. Sitting there with the world's leading gambling affiliates, fresh off Vision Quest. It was very clear to me that there was no direction in that life and no pathway forward for me. The most successful people were, living in Monte Carlo and Costa Rica, and really their only pathway forward was, they were just playing video games and just making more money. And that's not the life that I want for myself, and that's not the life that I want for the world. And as I've had this time to do this deep introspection here on Caterpillar Dreaming, slow, deep transformation, the world has slipped further and further into slavery, doing more and more research, reading more books, but primarily, I've got a whole, house full of here books, but primarily been watching online content and studying. Been going through Mark Passio's work. I've finally got up to the video part, episode 197 or so of his work, which I highly encourage people to go through. And at some point, I guess what I'm reflecting on here is the comfortability factor. And at some point, you've got to be uncomfortable enough with the way that the world is to come off the mountain and to put yourself out there. And as someone that does have a big bone to pick with the poverty consciousness in these kind of spiritual or philosophical crowds, I also want to speak out as someone with direct experience as being a millionaire. That alone is obviously not going to make you more happy. In fact, it can even heighten things that are going on in your personal life, because you don't have to go to a 9-to-5 job. Not that I have in my adult life really, because I've always worked for myself, for the most part, since 21 or so. And so you have a lot of space. What are you going to fill your day with? How are you going to have self-discipline? When everyone else goes to work, what are you going to focus on? I knew that I didn't want to just sit in a mansion on the beach. I've, I've spent a lot of my money on actually trying to do good in the world. And I'm not as financially comfortable, nowhere near actually. I've got I've still got a lot of financial things going on actually. So this is not some gloating kind of thing actually, because I have worked very hard to put my money towards good things, taking care of land and things that aren't necessarily financially viable as what other people would say. Working on solutions for communication without censorship. But I wanted to put this out there because there's a glorification of people that have had financial success. They've accumulated some wealth. Maybe you got lucky in crypto, or maybe you didn't get lucky in crypto and you just made a shit ton of money. No, Bitcoin is not the solution. You can shove your artificial scarcity up your ass. And even the people in the natural law community, sorry, how can you say that you're teaching natural principles? How can you say that artificial scarcity is not part of a financial system aligned with nature, and then promote Bitcoin? And crypto is a huge scam for the most part, to be honest with you. Yes, I'm actually in that field, sort of. Well, I am, yeah. But, yeah. This is a spiritual warfare. This is about the state of the human condition, which is slavery. And until we get more people who are successful in different fields coming together and sharing a message not based on I made some money, so how fucking great I am, so, follow me. And maybe this is coming across like that in some level. Maybe this is coming across as some kind of way to get that out there. And I'm a little bit nervous of that, actually, because that's not the point. The point is that I've been there. I have the direct experience. And big deal. I think that there is something to being able to manifest an action and create something large that's reciprocal. I do think that I've got some very special and unique skills and the ability to create in the physical abundance, so to speak. And I do think that, we can have more of that, not based in this current financial usury system, and I do have a lot to share there. But this de facto Satanism has got to stop. And I've said no to that a long time ago. We need to have care for each other. And, how do I even say this without coming across as like some kind of guru thing and, all of that kind of thing. But rightly or wrongly, I chose to put my money into things like being a custodian of sacred land and to help create technology aligned with humans. You don't have to choose that path. And I also tithe 10% of it. But I just wanted to share this message because as much as there are benefits of having the time in isolation and the personal time, and it is a privilege to have the space and the money to be able to do these different modalities, it also makes you very, very aware of your flaws and all of the things that aren't in alignment. And I can put my hand up and say, I've got a lot more work to do. I feel like I've done so much. And speaking honestly, not humble brag, but I've got a lot more to do. It's on a day-to-day level, like everyone else. You can have cleaners, and you can delegate, and you can have all these systems in place. You can have your 4-hour work week stories and all of that. But we've got to keep our minds sharp and our physical bodies sharp, and we've got to have the self-discipline. We've got to put our energy towards true freedom on earth. The causal factors that create freedom. So me sitting on a mountain in some ego state, talking about how I'm off grid and all of this kind of thing doesn't create freedom on earth. In fact, since I've been here, the human condition has got far, far worse. And it's urgent. So I wanted to share my direct experience with that. And that's really all I have to say. So I'm putting myself out there. I'm doing this content because I understand that maybe it sounds easy if you've got the freedom of time and money to be able to focus on things, and that it's harder for other people. I understand that argument. But ultimately, there's a lot more to it, and it's not solving anything. And so yes, I've done a lot of good work. It's not that I regret in any way or think that I've made the wrong decision or anything like that, because I was guided to come here from my shamanic work. And I'm very proud of myself for that. And I do think that we need to have more care for nature and to be true custodians and go through initiations, and I'm quite passionate about kind of rites of passage and, divine masculine and divine feminine and all that kind of stuff beyond the new age slop. So as someone that is a millionaire, good for me, big pat on the back, but really what we need to focus on, and what I'm imploring everyone to focus on, is natural law and objective morality, and to align our actions so that we can all be free. Because having money and being off the grid in some place is not the action that does create true freedom. So it's time that we started putting our thoughts, actions, mind, energy towards the causal factors of true freedom. So if I can share one message from my experience, that's what I would like myself to do more of, and everyone. That's it for now. Much love. See you next time. Bye-bye.